What's happening, guys? Sam Adams here, and welcome to a brand new episode of Caffeinate today for May the 15th of 2019. My name is Samuel Adams, and welcome to today's show. Of course, for those that are brand new to the program, this is a daily gaming news podcast where I bring you the hottest gaming news from around the industry. And I'll let you guys know what is going on in the industry we all love. And today, we have a leak that appears to be covered up as a joke. We'll talk more about what that means, but if I had to guess, I would say a brand new Splinter Cell game is on the way. But what else is on the way? WoW Classic, because we finally have a release date for the long-awaited remake of the classic World of Warcraft experience, which is inevitably not going to be as good as you remember it. I'm sorry, nostalgia plays tricks on the mind. On top of that, today we have a Nintendo Direct coming down the pipe, completely and totally in regards to Super Mario Maker 2. The Last of Us 2 dev is looking to, quote, close out development of the game. Red Dead Online is bringing a full role-playing system this summer. What does that mean for you? It means a much more in-depth experience for Red Dead Online. Ghostbusters, the video game Remastered, appears on a Taiwan ratings board, and a YouTuber has created a working, functional, fully amazing GameCube Classic, GameCube Mini, a miniature version of a GameCube console. It's not really news because YouTubers do some amazing things, but it's phenomenal, and I want to show you guys what the internet is capable of. But that is the lineup for today's show. Again, if you do happen to be new here, this show is hosted 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, right here on twitch.tv/TheSamuelAdamsLive, and then the show is taken down and put up on youtube.com/SamuelAdamsMedia, as well as podcast services around the world, if you did want to find it where you listen to podcasts. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into today's top stories. Ubisoft says the creative director was obviously joking when he announced a new Splinter Cell game. But was he really? So, let's go ahead and go to the original story. We've just gotten our first official confirmation there is a new Splinter Cell game on the way in a rather unceremonious fashion. Julian Grady, who is the creative director on The Division 2, has revealed through a tweet celebrating drinks with a few of his colleagues at Ubisoft that he is working on the next game in the franchise with For Honor creative director Roman Campos Oriola and Far Cry series producer Dan Hay. Only missing Ghost Recon and Rainbow Six game, but on their way, he said, presumably referring to the members from those teams who had not yet joined them at their gathering. The tweet also mentions Grady can't wait for E3, which likely alludes to this new Splinter Cell game being revealed at Ubisoft's press conference at the show on June the 10th. Ubisoft has been teasing a new Splinter Cell since at least 2017, when CEO Yves Guillemot told Jeff Keighley that he hadn't forgotten about the series. Since the fans have been fed morsels with Sam Fisher showing up in Ghost Recon Wildlands, even as Guillemot stated earlier this year that a new game in the series would have too much pressure on it. But an update has found out that the announcement may not be as official as we might once have thought. Shortly after the initial tweet, Grady changed his profile picture and Twitter background to Splinter Cell imagery, then posted he might be in trouble due to his tweet and not to retweet it, likely said tongue-in-cheek. Ubisoft, however, says the whole announcement is a hoax. Julian was obviously joking, as Julian likes to do, the company said in a statement to Game Informer. It looks like our creative directors are having fun right now. We do not have any announcements to make at this time. Whether this is actually the case or Ubisoft trying to cover up a leak is up for debate at this point, and I suppose we will find out at E3, because again, all of this can be read into as deeply or as not as you would like. In my opinion, I think we are going to be getting a Splinter Cell at E3. It just makes sense. Now, the question is, how much Tom Clancy is too much Tom Clancy? Because we have got a lot of Tom Clancy coming down the pipe. Of course, Ubisoft is doing a lot of stuff with all of the various Tom Clancy families, so to speak. Rainbow Six is teasing its brand new operators for the next season. On top of that, The Division 2 just came out. On top of that, we have a brand new Ghost Recon game coming out soon. To throw a Splinter Cell in there would be mind-boggling, because that's just a lot of games coming out in 2019. But it's not to say that that would be necessarily a bad thing. I think there is definitely space for a Splinter Cell, depending on how it is done and how impressive the game itself actually is. Now, I think going back a couple of months to the quote from Yves, that's a big deal to have a Splinter Cell game coming out in 2019, because it has been a long time since we last saw a Splinter Cell game, so it will have a lot of pressure on it. But sometimes you just have to swallow that pill and go ahead and pump one out. Will it fall short of some fans' expectations? Likely, but all games do. And so if you are able to create a genuinely awesome Splinter Cell experience, there is no reason to not put one out in 2019. I, for one, would be very much so down with that, as the kids say. But what a strange way for this game to potentially leak. Is he joking? Is he not? According to Ubisoft, he is, but can we really trust them when they're trying to, make a giant worldwide reveal, which very well could be dependent on some other parties. For instance, there could be an agreement with Xbox to unveil the new Splinter Cell game at their conference, and so they're trying to play this off to keep everybody happy, because that would be very stressful, in my opinion. A lot that can be, read into here, as I said, but at the moment, there is at least a tease of a potential Splinter Cell game and a joke that has been confirmed as a joke, but really truly does not seem a joke. Again, we're reading into things, but exciting times nonetheless for fans of Splinter Cell. Now, this summer is going to be one giant exciting time for fans of World of Warcraft because it is leading up to the release of WoW Classic, which debuts on August the 26th of 2019. Technically the 27th, depending on where you are. So, a 15th anniversary edition of the regular game arrives in October. You now have a date to add to your calendar if you are hankering to revisit World of Warcraft's earlier days. Blizzard plans to launch World of Warcraft Classic on August the 26th in the Americas and the UK, August 27th in most other places. It will be available to all regular WoW subscribers at no extra cost. If you missed the demo, you will have more chances to play ahead of launch. Select WoW subscribers will get into a closed beta that starts May the 15th, while a trio of focus stress tests will begin May 22nd for veteran players who opt in. As expected, the game is a touched-up version of the original massively multiplayer game in its most refined form around the Drums of War update from August 2006. That means no world-altering expansions or other major game mechanics have appeared since then. While you will lose some of the creature comforts of the up-to-date World of Warcraft, you will also lose some of the complexity. Just be ready to focus mostly on monster slaying at first, since some of the other player versus player elements will arrive on a gradual basis. If you would rather mark the occasion using your current version of the game, you will have plenty of options. Blizzard is heralding WoW's 15th birthday with upcoming in-game events, including a 25-player raid that represents a greatest hits of the title's bosses over the years. There's also a $100 15th anniversary collector's edition of the game that arrives in October that will include in-game mount bonuses, a 10-inch Ragnaros statue, a pen, a mousepad, and some art prints. Yes, that is a lot to shell out. This is more for dedicated fans than for anyone else. But if there is any franchise that has some dedicated fans, it is World of Warcraft. So, of course, this is a very big deal because this is going back to where it all kind of began. The game has changed so much over the years that people have been wanting to go back to that original state, to go back to that nostalgia-filled era of World of Warcraft, and Blizzard is making it happen by completely and totally recreating the original experience that we had back in 2006. Now, I will say, I have never played World of Warcraft for more than 2 hours. It's just not my game. I'm sorry. But for fans of WoW, this is a dream come true, and one that I'm sure many people are going to be checking out. Very cool that it is included to everybody that has a WoW subscription, but on top of that, very cool to see it coming out in August. I think that's a pretty good release date because then you can just throw yourself into it, and with stress tests and multiple opportunities to play the game between now and then, it seems like a pretty solid plan to launch a classic game. Hopefully all will go well. Of course, if there is one company that's good at launching big games that depend heavily on server stability, it is Blizzard. Of course, they fall short sometimes, but still they do a fairly good job. So if you did want to dive into it, it seems like currently, if I am reading the community correctly, now is not the best time to dive into the regular version of WoW. Of course, some may say any time's the best time. Just go out and play and have a good time. The community is waiting for some changes here and there, but the 15th anniversary should be a pretty good opportunity to dive in and see if it's something you might be interested in. And of course, I would not recommend that $100 statue edition unless you just have money to throw around and you want to dive into it. But again, 15th anniversary WoW Classic coming out the 26th of August / the 27th of August, depending on where you are in the world. Very exciting times. However, today we are getting news about Super Mario Maker 2 via a Nintendo Direct arriving today, again, May the 15th. And completely out of the blue, a Super Mario Maker 2 Nintendo Direct has been announced to air today, the 15th of May. The show will be 15 minutes long and packed with info about the upcoming release. The following description for the Direct has just been shared in a press release. Tune in on Wednesday, May the 15th at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time for a roughly 15-minute presentation packed with information all about Super Mario Maker 2 for the Nintendo Switch. Now, of course, as always, the guys over at Nintendo Life will be hosting the video on their official channel, so check back there. But as a reminder, the game launches on the 28th of June, just a couple of weeks after E3, so you will likely be getting a lot of various, features shown off in this Direct. You'll be getting a lot of gameplay shown off in this Direct. You will see what is bringing you back to the Super Mario Maker franchise within this Nintendo Direct. Why should you buy this? That's what they're proving here today. Now, with that being said, do you really need a reason to buy Super Mario Maker 2? It's a very cool concept, and of course, for those that might not be familiar with the original game, it basically allows you to create Mario games, mainly the classic platformers and the more modern platformers, but with that platformer mechanic, you can pretty much create whatever you would like. Very exciting stuff for those that are fans of course, just Mario games in general. The fact that you can play other people's levels, the fact you can share levels with friends, all of that is all well and good, and it's a very exciting time. And of course, the Nintendo Switch is going to be the perfect home for this kind of thing with its touchscreen displays and its much more intuitive controls as compared to the Wii U, which of course is where Mario Maker originated, and it was also on the 3DS and all of that good stuff. But for those that want to build more Mario levels, congratulations. You are in luck because, hey, big Nintendo Direct coming today. Now, let's talk about The Last of Us Part 2 because it is going to be wrapping up development very soon. In fact, the dev is looking to close out development. Is Naughty Dog almost finished developing The Last of Us Part 2? I would say they are, in fact. It looks like The Last of Us Part 2 might be almost finished. Co-game director Anthony Newman said on Twitter that the developer Naughty Dog is looking to hire people to close out the long-awaited PlayStation 4 game. That wording suggests the development might be nearing an end. That being said, the closeout period for The Last of Us Part 2 might not necessarily happen quickly. Still, the fact that the game's co-director is using that terminology suggests the title is indeed at least entering the final phase of development. It is also worth mentioning that Newman never even mentions The Last of Us Part 2 in his tweet, although his reference is closing out a project is no doubt related to that title. Naughty Dog has no other announced projects in the works. Naughty Dog Vice President Neil Druckmann said back in April that Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson completed their shoots for Joel and Ellie respectively, and he said that The Last of Us Part 2 contains the most ambitious cinematic shoot that we have ever done. No release date or even a release window has been announced yet for The Last of Us Part 2. The parody website The Onion recently posted a silly story saying that the game would launch in 2019, but Naughty Dog responded by saying it would share more info when it is ready. For more on the much-awaited PS4 game, you can always check out GameSpot's vast swath of knowledge, but if I had to guess, E3 2019 has to have some kind of news about The Last of Us Part 2. Of course, PlayStation not hosting a conference at E3 this year, more likely going to be going the digital route, having some kind of state of play, etc. And that's likely where we're going to be getting this, if not a announcement directly from the developer itself. So, stay tuned on the media channels, the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, etc. for a release date for this game. And of course, I'll let you know. Don't worry, I'll be freaking out too, because I am very excited about The Last of Us Part 2. Of course, The Last of Us has been a generation-defining game. It came out on the tail end of the PS3 and then remastered on the PS4 just a couple of years later, and man, does it just shine. It is just a phenomenal game. Really good storytelling, fantastic atmosphere building, just a world that is worth getting into. And so, The Last of Us Part 2 is shaping up to be one of the biggest games of the generation. Slated to come out on PS4, likely going to be ported to PlayStation 5 shortly after it does come out, but of course, that all comes in the future. We're thinking too far ahead here. When could we be seeing this game? Let's do a little bit of predicting. When are we going to be getting The Last of Us Part 2? I have an early 2020 release date in my mind. That just seems more realistic for me. in my opinion, if you are closing out development currently, and it is May 15th of 2019 when we're talking about this, you aren't nearly finished with the game. Of course, back in April, they confirmed that the shoots were done, so all of that cinematography, all of those, body tracking mechanics, all of that good stuff, that's all in the files, that's all being worked on. But if you are still closing out development, there is still a good bit of work to be done. I would say 2020, maybe around March, April 2020 at the earliest, would be a pretty good prediction. Could be coming even after that. Will it be pushed back to the next generation of consoles? That's a big question. Will it be cross-gen when it comes out, PS4 and PlayStation 5? That's still up in the air as well. I wouldn't be shocked to see that happen. But still, we have little to no info as to what is actually going on with The Last of Us Part 2. I'm just hypothesizing here. I am speculating, if you will. I am vomiting thought. That's what I'm doing. Very exciting stuff nonetheless, but we will see what happens whenever E3 does roll around, because it's a big time for the industry nonetheless. So now let's talk about a game that not too many people are actually excited about, Red Dead Online. I'm sorry, I had to take a dig at it. Red Dead Online is to introduce a full role-playing system this summer, introducing the Bounty Hunter, the Collector, and the Trader. Red Dead Online has announced a new surprise update today, and Rockstar also shared future editions that will be in the works through the rest of the spring and summer. The largest announcement here is the future edition of roles, which allow players to pick up a specialization and level up that role within the frontier. It's an intriguing contrast to the Grand Theft Auto Online, where players focus on the acquisition of property and wealth. Here, Rockstar has chosen to make the real progression path centered around player choice and abilities. So, what exactly is coming? In May and June, players will be receiving new free roam missions and clothing. On May 21st. On May 28th, there will be new content for free roam and showdown modes, followed on June the 4th by another showdown mode. They're also adding the Railroad Baron free roam event focused around capturing cars on a train that is moving through the map. June 11th's update will include yet another showdown mode and a host of clothing additions to the store, some of which are limited time. Throughout these updates, there will be weekly bonuses that include cash and gold gifts, increased payouts on missions, and care packages. A summer update is coming. The larger content update, which does not have an exact date announced, is scheduled for this summer. Players will be able to progress in 3 roles, either by focusing on one at a time to advance quickly, or all 3 slowly by mixing and matching play styles. The first of these roles, the Bounty Hunter, hunts down wanted criminals. The second role, the Collector, searches the world for treasure and sells their finds. And finally, the Trader builds a business at their camp. These are just the first roles to be added to the game, and we can expect more to come throughout the lifespan of Red Dead Online. Each role will offer a unique gameplay loop along with a new role-specific weapons, outfits, and cosmetics. And more info about each role and the exclusive content they get in-game is going to be coming, but it's a promising sign for the future of Red Dead Online. Now, of course, as they say here on Polygon, I'll go ahead and echo that. You can't replicate the success of Grand Theft Auto Online because it is literally a sandbox of a world where you do the zaniest, most out there, crazy, acrobatic stunts, just over-the-top, action-packed adventure. That is Grand Theft Auto. Red Dead Online is much more grounded. You are a cowboy, you are a bounty hunter, you are a trader in the wild, wild west that is beginning to be tamed, as we all know, but still, you are this character. And so I think to introduce a full role-playing system into the game that is native to the game, that actually has weight in the game, is going to bring a lot of people back to this, because that's really the beauty of Red Dead Online, is that it does give you this living, breathing world to roam around in. You don't necessarily have, giant jets with unlimited grenades and grenade launchers and Maseratis and stuff that you're driving around, as in Los Santos. It's not as action-packed, but for those that love the world of Red Dead, for those that like that role-playing mechanic, and for those that like to really throw themselves completely and totally into the life of somebody online, that is just a huge set of tools that is going to be bringing a lot of people back into the world of Red Dead. Now, I will say, once I finished the single-player story, I just got rid of the game entirely. I'm sorry, that's where it ends for me. I'm not going to be going back and playing Red Dead because the world is so massive, the world is so in-depth, that it's overwhelming. And so I got the main story out of the way, I did some side missions, I had a good time, I got a feel for Arthur Morgan, and it was a good experience, and so I'm finished with it. But for those that did want to go back to Red Dead Online, looks like this summer is going to be the time to do it, because now it's finally getting fleshed out, and it actually is finding its own. I feel like it's finally finding its identity, and Rockstar is finding out what it wants this to actually be. But if Rockstar and Red Dead Redemption 2 aren't your thing, maybe Ghostbusters the video game is, because a remaster has appeared on a Taiwan ratings board. Who is that you are going to ring? Who are you going to call? The Taiwan Digital Game Rating Committee are at it again after last week's mysterious revelation of the new Under Night in Birth entry. The board has dropped a listing for an Xbox One release titled Ghostbusters, the video game remastered. While there is no real info on this out-of-the-blue release, many will obviously assume that we are looking at an upgrade of the 2009 title of the same name, which famously saw original cast members Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis return to voice the famous Ghostbusting Quartet alongside William R. Atherton, Annie Potts, and even Max von Sydow. Ghostbusters, the video game remastered, is listed as being published by Mad Dog Games of NBA Playgrounds and Shaq Fu, A Legend Reborn fame. There is also a website link available, although PlayGhostbusters.com still appears under construction. Of course, there is an update coming down the line. It's going to be a big one. I'm sure this is going to be one of the Games of the Year contenders right here. But I kid. However, the game itself is actually not that bad. I remember playing it back in 2009. Of course, in the midst of 2009, or at least towards the latter end of that, I was completely and totally infatuated with Modern Warfare 2. So I didn't really get much else in aside from that game. But Ghostbusters, I remember renting, if I remember correctly, from Blockbuster. Yeah, and it was a good time. It was a really good time. So to have it remastered, I think is something that kind of makes sense, actually, depending on what's happening with the Ghostbusters IP. Now, some people will say, why? Why do we need this? Answer, we don't, but it's happening anyway, so get ready. Of course, this is all kind of still up in the air. We will see if this actually does end up coming out, but to have the original cast, to have this game that does the franchise well, coming to the PS4 and the Xbox One, hypothetically, of course, currently only listed for the Xbox One, but we can assume, it could be a good time. So we will see what happens with this, and I will let you guys know when we know more about Ghostbusters, the video game remastered, because, again, it has appeared on a Taiwan ratings board, but will it appear on your console soon? And to round out today's show, normally I leave you with a deal, a feel-good story, something like that. Today, I'm leaving you with something awesome because a YouTuber does what Nintendo don't and builds a working GameCube classic. There is even a miniature controller to match. After two hugely successful retro console re-releases with the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, Nintendo unfortunately never got around to shrinking down its other consoles. At least not yet, I would add. Now, a YouTuber by the name of Mad Morta has stepped in to help with a fully functioning miniature Nintendo GameCube. It features 4 working controller ports, draws power over micro USB, and there is even a USB Type A port that can be used with the Wii U's USB GameCube adapter. Rather than using a Raspberry Pi or another mini computer to emulate the console, Mad Morta instead used a circuit board harvested from a Wii, heavily modified it to get it to fit inside the tiny plastic candy box used as the case, and the Wii's CPU and GPU are basically faster, smaller, and more power-efficient versions of the GameCubes, which makes the hardware fully compatible and better suited for these types of mods. The console outputs composite video over a 3.5mm connector, and the controllers also connect over 3.5mm jacks. Although it works with full-size original GameCube controllers, either with a 3.5mm or USB adapter, Mad Morta also recently produced a fully functioning mini GameCube pad. Yeah, it's so small that it almost looks impossible to use, but you can't fault her dedication. From the functioning orange LED on the top of the console to the miniature power button, the GameCube mod looks every bit as authentic as Nintendo's own Classic Edition consoles. Now, the company seems to be done with its own retro re-releases, but it's nice to see the community step up and make fantastic DIY efforts like these. But I want to highlight this for a moment. This is just phenomenal. Okay, so again, I want to reiterate, this is a candy box, as you would get from a GameStop checkout line. She has literally modded this entire console to function. It works. It actually plays games. Of course, it has a Wii, heart in it, but still, it functions, and that's amazing. Now, on top of this, of course, she goes deeper into the design and whatnot. There she is playing Super Mario Sunshine. To actually look at the controller that she made, this is one of the keychains, similar in fashion to what you would find at a GameStop checkout line. She made this work. This is phenomenal. So if you do want to check it out, again, Mad Morta on YouTube. She has tons of views, of course, on these specific products, but I'm excited to see where this goes. I would love an official GameCube miniature release because the GameCube has some of the best Nintendo games in the entire lineup. Mario Sunshine, of course, being one of them. But it's just amazing to me that somebody has this amount of talent, this amount of engineering skill, this amount of creativity to create something like miniature GameCube controllers out of keychains and a fully functional GameCube Mini out of a candy box. That blows my mind. And also, on top of that, it looks phenomenal. That's amazing to me. But I digress. Maybe it's just me that is amazed by this. I highly doubt it, though. However, I hope you were amazed by this episode of Caffeinate. Of course, if you were, be sure to subscribe on youtube.com/SamuelAdamsMedia, and you can get this show delivered to your sub box, inbox, whatever you want to call it, 5 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's only 3 days. Forgot about Tuesday and Thursday. Just kidding. It's real early. But Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/TheSamuelAdams if you do want to watch the show live. And then, of course, you can find it other places. But until tomorrow, you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day. I will talk to you soon, and peace.